All right, so chapter 4 is about the forms of business ownership. A lot of people want to start a business, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Um, but I think one of the things that you have to realize up front is the form of business ownership is going to matter. The simplest form of business ownership is called a sole proprietorship. And then they get a little bit more complex from there. Partnerships are a little bit more complex because there's more than one person involved and there's more things to do with that person or more than one person. And corporations are another actual form of business that you can choose um, to be. So we're going to look at those three and some hybrid mixes of those next time. So a sole proprietorship basically is a business that's owned and operated by one person. It's the easiest form of business to start. And most sole proprietorships are quite small, mostly because it's, again, a lot of sole proprietorships are one person shows. So if I wanted to be a consultant and work for myself, being a sole proprietorship is the easiest form of business to start. Um, and I can just start being in business for myself. And this is normally the easiest way to start. So again, they start small, but all of the large corporations that we have come to know in our lives started as sole proprietorships as well. Sam Walton simply had what they called a five and dime store, which is 5 and 10 cent store, back in the 50s. And, he would just sell a whole bunch of things. So like a very, very tiny department store. And it grew from there. But he started as a sole proprietorship, as most businesses do start as sole proprietorships. Okay. They are the most popular form because they're the easiest to start. Okay. And so they do kind of classify themselves as the most popular form of ownership. They're small, so they rank last in sales revenue. Okay. But as you see, most of the businesses, this figure is in your book, most of the businesses in America, at least in 2017, were sole proprietorships. Okay. But regardless of the fact that they make up the largest percentage of types of businesses, they are very, very small. So in actual sales revenue and things like that, it's a small percentage of the whole thing. Corporations and partnerships are much smaller in number, but they're much larger in scope. And so they have a bigger impact on our lives than a sole proprietorship would on a day-to-day basis. And that's what this figure shows us in terms of actual sales. And this is also based on the 2017 number from the IRS. Corporations have over $30 trillion or had over $30 trillion in sales in 2017, compared to sole proprietorships, which at a trillion, 1.3 trillion is nothing to sneeze at. But compared to the other forms of business, it ranks last in terms of total sales. Okay. So in terms of actually starting a sole proprietorship, it's relatively easy. Most sole proprietorships can be started just by you deciding you wanted to go into business for yourself. There are some limitations to that because you can't just decide today you want to start a daycare, because there are lots of regulations. There's some state licensures and other types of things that you have to do in order to actually have a daycare. You can't decide to be a cosmetologist or decide to open up a barber shop or a beauty salon because you need to have licenses to do that. And so it is easy to start in most cases. But if you wanted to just, I mean, winter, we're getting snow on Friday, apparently. Our first little snowflakes are coming Friday. Um, if you wanted just to plow snow, clear off driveways, parking lots, etc., that doesn't require any particular license, state license to do so, other than you need, of course, a driver's license to drive your truck. But anybody can do that. If I wanted to go ahead and cut grass or trim trees or um, clean houses, there's no special license for that. So I could start doing that right away. So it is relatively easy to start. And of course, if it doesn't work out, it's really easy to finish, very easy to close as well. You just stop doing business. Yeah. There's certainly pride of ownership when you're the owner of a sole proprietorship. You are the sole owner. And so everything that comes along with that business's reputation is because you built it. And there's a lot of pride in that ownership. If you have a good business model and you've helped a lot of people out, and they have a good opinion of you, there's a lot of pride that goes with that. Of course, because you are the only owner, if the company is profitable, all of those profits are yours. Okay, the profits of any business belong to the owner. And in this case, as a sole proprietorship, you're the only owner, so any profits are yours. You decide what to do with them. The interesting thing about being a sole proprietor is you are taxed like a personal income. It's a You put the profit of the company, your company, down on your tax as your income. And under the law, there's no difference between, as a sole proprietor, there's no difference between, Nick the person and Nick the business sole proprietor. And so under the tax law, you're taxed as an individual. And those tax rates start as low as 10% and go up from there. That's different, of course, if you're a corporation, they start at 21% and go up from there. So there are no special taxes. And as a matter of fact, you are taxed as a person. It's wonderful to be your own boss. And a lot of people tout this idea as, yeah, I'm my own boss. But, that also means that you're responsible for everything. If you don't get out of bed and get stuff done, nothing's happening in your business because it all rests on you. It all rests on you. So you do have that flexibility. You can set your hours and your work schedule and so forth. But I can tell you from many years ago of starting a business, it's all consuming. It's a 7-day a week in terms of time consuming. It's just 7 days a week. You're always thinking about it. You're always working on something. And you're the one that has to set your own schedule. So time management and other types of things are important. Of course, there certainly are some disadvantages to this form of business. One is that if anything goes wrong, everything goes wrong. Because again, under the law, there's no difference between you, the person, and you, the business. And so everything that you own in the business and outside of the business is at risk in case something terrible happens and you're in the losing end of a very bad lawsuit. All your business assets could be taken away to pay that debt, and all your personal assets are at risk as well. So yes, they can go after your house, they can't go after your car, they can't go after your savings account, even though it's not, you keep it separate from the business. Well, under the law, there's no difference between you, the person, and you, the business, if you're a sole proprietor. So this unlimited liability is going to be coming up as something that's related to that, because literally you could lose everything. Okay. There are ways to protect yourself against that. There's liability insurance and other types of things for business owners that helps to protect the risk, but nothing can really kind of stop this from being a disadvantage. If it's a sole proprietorship, once the owner retires or dies or is just stops doing it, the business is done. Business is done. They call that a lack of continuity. It's just the business stops from existing. And so once you stop, if you're a sole proprietor, it's your business. And once you stop doing that business because you retire or you sell it or you die, um, it's over. Business is over as well. Okay, done. Unfortunately, because you are the only owner and it's your business, you have to make sure you have access to money. What we call access to capital is simply, access to money so you can make sure all those bills are paid, because all those bills are your bills. And so you need access to money. And one of the biggest problems with the sole proprietorship and why many of them do end up failing is simply they just don't have the ability to grab a lot of money. It's basically limited to your own credit. So you as a person, if you have savings, well, okay, that's money. If you have access to credit because you have credit cards, you have a line of credit at the bank, you can get a business loan. There's only so much they'll lend you as a person. I mean, it's not like an unlimited amount of money they're going to lend you. There's only so much they will lend you, and there's only so much money you can grab yourself. And that is a disadvantage because sometimes, again, here we're living in a COVID world. Um, Stuff happens that are beyond our control, and the only people who are going to be able to continue is folks that actually had some reserves, has some money or access to money to be able to get through rough periods and continue to exist. It's really the lack of money. What you see a lot of businesses going under, restaurants and others, because most of them are organized as small businesses, as sole proprietorships. Not all of them, but they just ran out of money. They just ran out of money. So it's a disadvantage for almost every form. Um, of course, because you are the owner and the manager, you run everything. You're in charge of the entire management of the company, no matter how small or big it is. And so oftentimes you have to have all those skills yourself. And if you don't have those skills, then you're hiring consultants to help you. So if you're not good at marketing in terms of on the internet, you're responsible for that. But if you don't know how to do digital marketing, you don't know how to do those pop-ups or other types of ads that just sort of appear on Facebook or other pages, you probably need to hire someone to help you with that. And so if you don't have that skill, you're hiring someone with that skill to help you. So that costs money too. Um, Bookkeeping is something that's often small businesses hire uh, people to do that for them. They hire accounting firms and bookkeeping firms to do all that stuff for them because they really don't have those accounting skills. Um, so that's some of the limits. And of course, it's really difficult when you're a sole proprietor um, to hire people for a few reasons. Probably the biggest reason is you really can't afford to pay them as much as they might get at other employers. And so, and if you could pay them exactly what other employers could give them, other employers might be offering them benefits that you cannot afford to give. So there's some real difficulty in finding and hiring employees if you're a sole proprietorship. I think that's why a lot of sole proprietorships rely on family to sort of hire and help out. Um, and they rely a lot on part-time help because then they really don't have to worry about benefits so much as the pay. But it is quite difficult. It is a disadvantage. And as your business grows and you need help, you need to hire people. So it's a disadvantage. The second form of business ownership is a partnership. You have to be, in order to have a partnership, two or more people have to be the co-owners of the business. You can't be a one person and be a partnership. You're stuck with sole proprietorship, or you could, of course, incorporate. Um, But partnerships, you need two or more people who are going to be a co-owner. Partnerships can be as simple as two people. Partnerships can be as complex as 50 to 100 people. Um, so there's no there's really no limit as to number of partners you can have in a partnership. Um, there are issues about ownership and roles of the company. You know, if you're an owner, what role do you play? What type of decision making power you have when you have to literally share that with all the other owners. So that's important to know. One of the bigger companies, it's Procter and Gamble is over 100 and I think it's at least 110 years old at this point, maybe a little older. They make a lot of your soaps, shampoos, laundry detergents, and other types of things, personal products, hygienic products, etc. But they started as a partnership, and of course, as they grew, they decided to become a corporation. And that's, of course, we talked about Walmart starting as a sole proprietorship. As Sam Walton's company started to grow and he wanted to expand, he changed his form of ownership from sole proprietorship to a corporation. Procter and Gamble did the same. They started as a partnership, but as they grew and needed more access to money and more things, they changed their form of ownership from a partnership to a corporation. So that can happen. That's something that definitely is certainly for quite common, and it's just a formal procedure of changing forms of ownership. So partnerships are much less common than corporations. I'm sorry, than sole proprietorships or corporations. They actually only represent about 10% of all American businesses out there are partnerships. And again, there are no legal maximum in terms of how many partners a partnership can have. It just can get a little bit confusing, and those things have to be worked out. The partners who are actually going to run or operate the business are called general partners. And so general partners are they're active owners who are managing the company as well. And then you have partners who are basically, they're like investors. They actually don't have there's no management responsibility at all. They just basically have provided money to the business in exchange for a share of ownership in the partnership. And so those are called limited partners. And of course, they do share in the profit, but probably not as much as a general partner because general partners are doing all the work. And so general partners are going to have a higher stake of ownership in the company than a limited partner. But limited partners are welcome because oftentimes all types of businesses need more money. And if that's the way you give it, that's the way it is. Partnerships are kind of like marriages because you're working very closely with someone or a group of people for business purposes. So it's probably really, really important that everyone get together and say, look, these are the terms and this is what the agreement of what we need to do. And that's called an articles of partnership. It's not required, but it is smart to do because at least now you have a document that all the partners agree. And what does that agreement mean? Well, who's going to make the decisions? Because in a partnership, one partner can bind the entire company into something like a loan. If you don't talk to other partners about that, I think they're going to be rightfully upset that you did that without their knowledge. And of course, partnerships now, they're all responsible for that. So it might be one partner got a loan for the business, but now all the partners are responsible for that loan because that's how the ownership works. Um, it's important to know, every partner might have a very different set of skills and different expertise. So you might start divvying out, you're going to be focused, you're going to be heading us and leading us on the marketing. You're going to be, this partner is going to be leading us on the finance and accounting part. This partner is going to be doing this. This partner is going to be doing that. You have to come to sort of an agreement of what your duties are going to be as partners. Otherwise, you start stepping on each other, and you start issuing different rules and agreements, and it's like it gets very, very confusing. What investment each partner is going to make, and what percentage of the ownership does that guarantee them? There's only 100% ownership at stake, so you you have to determine, and of course, the more partners you have, the more difficult it is. If you only have two partners and they're both putting an equal amount of money to start the business, then it's easy to say, okay, it's a 50-50 partnership. Whatever we do is 50-50. If we make a profit, half it is mine, half it is yours. Okay, great. Well, it gets very confusing when you have, instead of two, what if you have 12? What if you have 22? Partnerships can be very, very detailed in ways that this needs to be written down and agreed to. So, what investment is that partner going to make? And I would add to this, what percentage of ownership does that guarantee? Um, what's the profit and loss for each partner? And that's kind of connected into this anyway. So again, it's nice when you're the owner and the company is profitable because a portion of that profit is yours. But if a company loses business, you have to cover the loss. Same is true with a sole proprietorship. If that sole proprietor loses money this year, they're going to decide, well, I'm going to cover the loss because they're the owner. Partnerships they're the owners. And so how do you cover the loss? It's nice when they make a profit. It's more difficult when the company makes a loss. And what happens when a partner wants out? Either they want to get out voluntarily or involuntarily because they die. You got to understand that if a partnership is A, B, C, partners A, partner B, partner C, they form a business and they want to add partner D. Well, the business ABC ceases to exist, and a whole new business, partnership ABCD, starts. So it's very, very, um, it's a little bit complicated in how all that type of works, but it's very easy for partnerships to change, and we have to keep track of those changes as different businesses, technically. Um, because they are. Let's say we have partnership A, B, C, D, and partner B dies. Well, then now they have to organize another partnership A, C, D, because B is no longer with us. So again, it's one of those types of things where partnerships change and the records have to change to show that. Your book actually gives you a figure here that shows you what an articles of partnership sort of might look like and what's agreed to. And again, much of what we talked about um, is listed here as well. And even a termination clause. What if a partner wants out? Or what if we want to add a partner? What's that like? So these are very, very important. So partnerships, they are easy to start. They're as easy as a sole proprietor. You and your buddy want to start cleaning houses or doing lawn work. Okay, you can start that, and that's terrific. You don't need any special licenses for that. You can start it right away. It's that easy, but it's difficult because there's two people involved. So to make sure that that partnership's going to last a long time, you should have an agreement. Should have an agreement of what's what. Okay. Well, I said it was so easy to start. It is. It's really that easy to start. It very much like a sole proprietorship. If there's no licenses or other types of things that you need from the state or local, you can literally start up right away. You should have more because there's two or more people. You should have more access to more money and more credit. So, that's one of the more important pieces of a partnership is there's more access to money, and you're pooling your money, so it builds up. There's certainly, interest on both parties and commitment to do well in this particular business venture. You have more skills and knowledge because, again, the old saying is true most of the time. Two heads are better than one, unless, of course, you're a big fan of the movies like Dumb and Dumber. Then there may be some exceptions to that rule, but in essence, in business, two heads are better than one because you have twice as many skills, twice as much knowledge going to work for the benefit of your business. All profits are property of the owners, and that's why you have to decide the share of ownership. Because once you do have a profit, what's my share? What's your share? What's this other person's share if there's more than two partners? So that all has to sort of be worked out. And partnerships are viewed like um, like sole proprietorships, whereas the person, there's no difference between the person and the business person. So if you're if you're a partner in a business, um, there's no difference between you, the person, and you, the business, the partner in that business under the law. So that creates some disadvantages that you'll see, but it also creates the advantage of when you do make the profit, you just put it down as your personal income. And like I said, those personal income rates start as low as 10% for individuals. Of course, there's always disadvantages. There's always, everything has advantages and disadvantages. You should actually kind of look at life that way. Regardless what you do, there's going to be advantages and disadvantages. Whatever choice you'd select to pursue, there's advantages and disadvantages to all those choices. So that's just the way life is. And everything should be looked upon as that. Nothing should surprise you that something has gone wrong because, well, there's always disadvantages to any form of any choice in any form of that. So for a partnership, again, there's no difference between the person and that person's personal assets and the business, the partner, and the partnership's assets. They're actually all looked upon as one. And so you can be responsible for the debts of others in your partnership. And that's a problem. If the partnership fails and there's debts that that partnership owes, they can come after the partners individually for their individual assets to pay those debts. And so it can be a big problem. Um, the states have gotten very, very, because in order to be, these definitions are business law is state law. Okay. And so states decide what the forms of ownership are and how you become that. Well, many states have also helped out this issue of unlimited liability by putting together something called a limited liability partnership or an LLP. And it basically gives some protection to other partners in case one partner is quite evil, like Dr. Evil. And it particularly is important for malpractice or negligence. So a lot of LLP. So if I was a doctors association, and the doctors that actually get sued the most, believe it or not, tend to be OBGYN, because any type of thing that happens with the baby's health, whether it's in or out of the womb, oftentimes is looked upon as a healthcare related liability or negligence on the doctor or hospital's part as to what went wrong with the child. So they tend to pay very, very high for liability insurance, but also they are at most risk for legal action. So almost all of them, I think, are organized as LLPs. And that means that if someone is, say, there's a doctor's association with 10 gynecologists, and one of them isn't, doesn't care all that much and makes a lot of mistakes. Well, under an LLP, the other 9 doctors, if it was very clear that this one doctor was the problem, the other 9 doctors would not be held in liability for the actions of that one bad doctor. So that's basically what a limited liability partnership does for folks like that. If it were a general partnerships, all of them would be on the hook. All of them would be on the hook for something that happened to the company. One of the other disadvantages is, again, partnerships are like marriages. You're going to disagree. How you handle those disagreements is very, very important. Um, of course, it's difficult if it's only two partners and you disagree, because then it's only 1 to 1. It might be good to have, an odd number of partners, 3, 5, or 7, because at least you can do, or 9, you could do like a Supreme Court vote. 5 to 4. We think this is the best thing to do, and all the partners agree that is how disagreements will be settled, is say by voting of the partners. So all those things have to be worked out, and because these disagreements can also mean partners want to leave. And if partners want to leave the business is dissolved and a new business has to start. Um, and that goes into the lack of continuity. Partnerships are terminated if any one partner, withdraws or dies, or in this case, if they actually add partners, then the new company starts. It continues, but it continues as a new partnership. And sadly, at certain points of time, based on the reality that it's hard to sell your investment in a partnership if there's no one that wants to buy it, and you might have a good value in the partnership. Partnership might be worth a lot on paper in terms of equity, and you might want out. Well, in order to want out, you're going to want to sell out. What if you can't? What if none of the other partners can buy you out? What if there's no one else that can buy your share of the partnership? Well, that investment you've made, it somewhat remains frozen in time until that can happen. That can be a long, long time. So that's a disadvantage if you do want out and you want your investment out. Sometimes that doesn't happen right away, and sometimes it doesn't happen at all. All right. So this leaves us with the third form of ownership, which is the corporation. And I want, because the rest of the book rest of this chapter rather, kind of goes into more detail on corporations as well, with nonprofits and some other types of things. So I actually want to deal with this topic next time we meet, and wrap up the chapter in that regard. Okay. So what I'll do is I will